with all the stuff that's coming up with graduation, and we got to help them with one thing, doing the assessment the other night, but more things in the evenings, because they never get to participate in any of the activities during the day. And there's its own community at night. There's a lot more people.
Yeah, there's quite a few people here tonight. A lot of you are.
They kind of, like, my
They don't
group
get to
works
interact,
3 years.
because even giving them the pizza is just passing out pizza to their classroom, to their class. It's not them getting the opportunity to cross paths with other people.
And I understand it's hard to get through attendance for those things. But they kind of, especially I guess where they're here 3 years, only at night or on weekends, they feel a little left out.
Anybody else?
Graduating though, and she said the only thing she would have to say is that she would have to, she'd done all the classes were online, but there'd be those times she'd have to come in for that online or in-class meeting, and she said, I live in Whitfield.
It's 2 hours drive.
She said, I had to drive 2 hours to do that, and she said, that's the reason I took the online classes, just so I wouldn't have to have that. So, well, they asked, so we'll bring it up.
Wonderful. You don't know which program to do.
Or something, but.
Programming science, she works in a physician's office and does everything online. A lot of psychiatry and all that stuff online. But she said all of her classes, she said, why, if it's an online course, do we have to come in for 2 hours for the class orientation? And technically, we do that a lot here.
Yeah, we do.
So really, she was driving 4 hours for 2 hours of orientation.
That's a really good point. Our university's kind of struggling with that too now, like getting some of our systems up to date, some of our infrastructure up to date with where our courses are. Our learners don't really want that anymore, need it.
I probably asked the wrong question, but I got 3 comments, and one of them was the student said that she wished that we had a more in-your-face way to tell them about scholarships. I didn't think she needed it, but that was one thing because she said we have a lot of scholarships.
That should be a big box. on
That's what I'm
that.
saying. That's
When
what
you
she said.
open the webpage for the college, it should be a big box.
That was one, and the other 2 comments, one student said it is important for our students to use their Mountain Empire email, and we're not mean enough in making them use their
Oh, I
emails.
am.
But she said because they get away with not using their college emails and checking it, so they miss stuff. And then they go back and look, and when they look, it's a bunch of emails that were important stuff that they missed. And one girl said, now that I'm graduating, I've trained myself that at least once a week, I have it on my calendar, now that I'm graduating. And then the third comment was study skills. And I think the young lady used the word threaded. She said, yes, it's an SDV at the beginning, but some kind of way to thread it throughout and smack me in the face with it, that this is something that I need. So I'm talking about, go to the games, and there's, she said, I mean, just make me do it. I mean, just put it in front of me.
One of the students, last Friday, I asked them, we were talking about study skills, because these were kids right out of high school, and they talked about not knowing how to study.
Yeah.
And this one fellow, young man, said, well, I finally figured it out. This is his last semester, and I said, well, that's good. I said, well, how did you figure it out? He said, I failed.
Yeah.
He didn't know how to, at that point, he didn't know how to study, so it's a tough lesson to learn.
It came up in clinical yesterday, there was a group of students that we had, and they said, yes, if we had any idea what we were getting into when we left high school, and we thought high school was bad, we had no idea what we were headed towards.
They really
Said we had no idea how to study. No idea.
We've been doing a lot of review of data over the last few weeks, and I'd like to share it with you all at some point, but we won't do it this afternoon because it's a lot of data. But do you all know the definition of success for Mountain Empire? Jamye, you should know. You remember this? Some of the old folks may remember. The old folks. It's actually a mixture of, there's 3 components. Retention, and that's retention from one semester to the next. Completing 2/3 of their classes that semester with a C or better. And an overall GPA of 2.0. Okay, so you have to meet all 3 of those to really be considered a success at Mount Empire. And the differences in the categories of students is dramatic between, you know, different age groups and so forth. But the data says that a student who has had a dual enrollment class, even one dual enrollment class while in high school, is 20% more likely to succeed than any others. Because it's learning what a syllabus is, what the expectations are, and that kind of thing. So we've really got to look at that and figure out how can we make that difference back at the high school, I think, before they actually get here. So anyway, it's a lot of studies going on, but I'll share some of the things that I learned when I was going around talking to some folks, and some of them are very curricular in nature, and I need to talk to a few folks about some curriculum suggestions. That was interesting. Another thing, the child care came up.
Yeah, the nursing students said that would even be something that they could participate in, like doing assessments of the children, or since they would have their own children in it, take turns being the person that's working there.
Yeah.
You know, that sort of thing, so.
Well, it kind of fits in with our early childhood program that we're working hard on, that Harriet's working hard on, and so there's, we do need to do some work there. There was another issue that they, some of the nursing students had issues with the differences in schedules for them versus us at Mount Empire because of their, I guess they go on Virginia Highlands calendar.
Actually, we do a compromise calendar between 3 campuses.
Okay, well, they were, you know, they said that kind of was a little bad. I had some complaints about snow schedules, we didn't have enough of them.
Snow days?
Snow days.
Yes, some folks where they live,
Yeah.
especially if we're getting up, they're getting up at 4 o'clock in the morning for to be in clinical a little after 6 at Houston Valley. That is a problem when they promise they're gonna make an announcement by 6. Well, that is way too late.
We have
It's
We've
kind of-
asked for that several. I've emailed Ron about that several times.
even 3.
He's trying.
I know, but he's another
It's a
one.
hard
I
decision to
wouldn't
make, and
wanna walk
sometimes it
in his
doesn't
shoes
really
either.
drop it down until 5:30.
Well, we just put it on the shoulders of the students and
Yeah.
tell them not to go come if it's unsafe, because we have plenty of time to make stuff up, but we ain't got time to put them back together again.
Right.
And then I heard that we gave too many tests. So, you know, I heard some things like that.
Then they whine when we don't give them enough,
Yeah.
if they give them great big tests over a lot of material.
Then there were some good curricular suggestions, so I do need to talk to some folks about that, and I'll do that. So, but anyway, I appreciate you doing that. If you talk to students and you got any good ideas, please share them with somebody, if not me, with your dean or somebody, and let's just get them out there and talk about it. But anyway, I'll leave you all alone. I've got to go do some cleanup in the kitchen and call it a heck.
Thanks. And we have a surprise for sometime this afternoon, maybe
yes,
at the
we
end.
do. Yes,
Okay.
after, toward the end, we've got another little gadget to give you, and it's kind of cool.
Okay. Thanks, Dr. Rattler.
It's kinda cool,
So some motivation to stick around, right?
kinda cool.
Well, thanks for coming back for the second part of the day. We're going to look at some tips and strategies for course design. So looking at instructional design. This morning we talked more about facilitation, what good teaching looks like, how that builds presence in different environments. Now we're going to think more on the design level. But we're going to start, even though it's really hot outside, we're going to have a snowball fight. So I'm going to ask you to grab a notepad or borrow a piece of paper from a friend. Write down one challenge that you have faced or you imagine you would face as an online instructor or a designer of an online course. What is a challenge related to designing and or teaching online courses? So write down a challenge, something you faced or you can imagine you would face. And then I'm going to ask you to crumple it up So write down your challenge and crumple it up. And in just a moment, we're going to all throw our snowballs. Make sure other people can read it. We're all going to throw them at the same time, so wait a second. We're going to sort of throw it in this area because you want somebody else to get your snowball. If you throw them up there, people are just going to have to go get them, and that's okay. So yeah, just in this, so if you're back there, throw it up here. If you're over here, throw it over there. Okay, so crumple it up, and on the count of 3, give it a toss. 1, 2, 3. Okay, find a snowball that's not yours. Open it up. You got to get up. Go get one. Okay, open it up and read the challenge. And let's talk for a couple of minutes with the people sitting around you. Let's talk about this challenge and any possible solutions you might have. Is this something you've experienced before, or do you have any possible solutions?
No, I have one.
Talk about it with the people around you.
Oh, here, one of these.
Love that. That sounds awesome. I wouldn't want to do that. Okay, let's come back together. Yeah, some people are moving around. Okay, I want you to hang on to those challenges. We're going to revisit them at the end of the session, and hopefully we'll have some new solutions. I want to give you a heads up. Near the end of the session, I'm going to sit down and let you guys share out, if we have some volunteers, to be thinking over the next little while. At the end of the session, I'm going to share a few of my favorite design tools. But I would love to hear from you guys if you have some design tools you love to use for course design. It could be an online environment or a face-to-face environment or a blend. So if you have a tool you'd really love to show off, I'm going to sit down and let you guys go up there and do that. So be thinking and working up the courage to do that if you would like to. That's coming a little later. So before we talk about design, let's talk about what our online learners need from us in design. So we're going to look at some design considerations, but first we need to know what it is that our online learners need. And there is a huge amount of research that suggests these are the things that online learners need from us. As we've already seen, they need opportunities to interact with us, with the content, and with each other. Research shows they need timely and descriptive feedback. Really, that's one of the main roles of an online instructor. Once the course goes live, you're teaching through feedback, and that's your primary role. They need opportunities to be active in their learning, not just passively taking in content, but active learners. They need clear communication about what's expected for submitting assignments and timelines, and how to navigate and how to complete procedures and things like that. Frequent communication with the instructor. Opportunities to apply content to authentic situations, as we've seen already. They need content in a variety of formats, and a safe, welcoming learning environment. These are all sort of things we talked about earlier today. So there's a mountain of research that shows we know online learners need these things. But I would argue that this is what all learners need. That online is supposed to be crossed out, but it's disappeared for some reason. These are not specific to online necessarily. So I would say that all learners need these things. I wouldn't say that somebody sitting in a face-to-face classroom doesn't need timely and descriptive feedback, or someone in face-to-face doesn't need a safe, welcoming learning environment. So all these things, I think we would agree that all learners need. But as we mentioned this morning, a lot of these are things that would happen naturally, or at least more easily in a face-to-face setting. So when we move to the online environment, there are things we have to be more intentional about, and things that we can address from a design perspective instead of being sort of reactive later on. So these are some things we can design into our courses. We know these are the things our learners need. So I'd like to walk through each of these just quickly and share some strategies and examples. And then we're going to talk about instructional design, some frameworks and tips for design. So we know that online learners need opportunities for interaction I shared a couple of examples this morning. That can happen in a lot of different ways. Synchronous meetings, we use WebEx. You guys have Collaborate. There are a lot of free tools available for that too. I'm going to share one a little bit later called Zoom. There's also like Google Hangouts, Skype. There are a lot of ways that you can connect with students synchronously. Virtual office hours is a great strategy for online instructors, just to be available. Just like we have our traditional office hours when students know we're available. If you're primarily in the online world, you can set up that same sort of experience for your students. I'm going to be online during this time period. You can message me. You can have a system set up where students can sign up, or you're just available and they pop in. Maybe you have a chat room space for that, or a messaging system. Interactive content, as we mentioned this morning. Asynchronous opportunities and collaborative opportunities. I struggle often with using collaborative assignments online. Collaboration is just hard in general, right? I just saw a picture a couple of days ago. It was a Batman logo, and it said, group work is why Batman works alone. And I totally get that, because it's so hard. And online, it's even harder. But there are things we can design in to be more of a support. Canvas is our learning management system. There are some group work tools built in. I'm sure Blackboard has some similar ways that you can bring people together. Google Drive is a great tool for groups to use. And I have a couple of other great group tools that I'll share with you later. So these are things we can think of in advance. As we're designing a course, be thinking, how will I design in interactive opportunities? Will I use synchronous meetings? And if so, how often are we going to do that? How can I communicate that I'm having virtual office hours? How will I build in asynchronous opportunities and collaboration? So we know students need timely feedback, and we know they need descriptive feedback. And as I mentioned earlier, teaching through feedback really is my main job. So I have 100% of the course design done before day one of the semester, right? Like I have the course built, it's ready to go. Once the semester starts and students take off, my main role is giving them feedback to shape and guide that experience for them. So primarily teaching through feedback. It's a really important part of the online learning experience. So again, consider using tools like screencasting, things we looked at this morning. Also, think about what is a reasonable time frame for feedback. Somebody mentioned that this morning, having a window. You can expect to hear from me in this much time. Also, one thing I've learned is make sure to tell students where to go to get that feedback. They don't always know. I'm finding that even with my graduate students, 3 weeks later, they'll say, oh, I just saw your feedback. I didn't know where to look for that. So sometimes we just need to be really clear about here's where you go for that. And rubrics can be really helpful to make feedback more efficient for you. So you can give descriptive feedback without having to type out a lot of stuff. If you have descriptors in your rubric, then you just click on those little cells. Canvas has a tool like that that automatically populates that. Does Blackboard have something similar with rubrics? Okay. So that can give students specific feedback, but it takes less time from you. So opportunities for active learning, students need that. So in online environments that might be synchronous, or it might just be sending them out into the real world to apply what they learn. So active learning in an online environment doesn't have to actually happen on the computer. There are a lot of opportunities that can go out into the world, be active, engage with other people, solve some real world problems, and then come back to the online space and reflect or share or discuss. So just ask them to do something with the content, get active with the content in some way. So we know that online learners specifically need clear communication about the expectations. So there are a lot of things you need to think through as you're designing a course. How do students participate in a synchronous meeting? How do you expect them to participate in asynchronous discussions? Do you have a rubric for that? Do you have specific expectations for what that looks like? How do you expect them to respond to feedback? In some of my courses, I require students to respond to my feedback so that I know they read it and acknowledged it and are thinking about it. I don't know any other way to make sure they read the feedback other than to require a response to me. So if you want to do that, think about that at the design level. How can students get help when they need help? So design a way for that to happen in the course. And make sure students understand that how you'll be using Blackboard. What features are you using and how does that work? How can students access those sorts of things? So there are a lot of specifics that you have to think through and communicate with students. You wouldn't necessarily have to think through all of those things in a face-to-face environment. If they have a question, they just raise their hand, or they come see you after class. So in an online environment, we can be proactive in designing in some of these things that we know they need from us. So we know they need to communicate with us on a regular basis. We know that announcements is a great way to do that. Blackboard has an announcements tool. I like to mix up my announcements and sometimes use audio or video announcements. So a lot of times I'll just type, but sometimes it's really easy just to hit my recorder, talk for a couple of minutes, and post that. And just another reminder of like, hey, I'm a real person. I have a family. Here's my house. You can kind of see it in the background, and kind of another way to build that presence in. Frequent communication also happens again through the synchronous meetings, through virtual office hours, through emails and messages and other tools. It sounds like you guys use the chat feature in Blackboard some, so there's some other tools we can use for that regular communication. In the online world, if I have a student who's really gone like 2 weeks or more without some sort of communication with me, I start to worry. That tends to mean that the student is sort of falling off the radar, or they're not checking messages, or something's going on, and I probably need to check in with them. And as we described this morning, our online learners need to apply what they're learning to situations that really matter. So thinking of case studies, scenarios, project-based learning, again, think outside of the learning management system. What is happening in the real world that they can go and be engaged with? So think about how to integrate field experiences, real-life experiences with their online content. Everything doesn't have to happen behind the computer screen. They can do things in the real world, even if it's an online course. And as we know, students need content in a variety of ways. The key thing here is really just to find out what works best for your students. So you don't waste a lot of time creating videos that they don't want to watch, or you're not always providing text and they really want something different. Particularly your most important content, the real key content, you want to make sure every student has access to, present that in more than one format. And finally, that safe, welcoming learning environment that we shared this morning is such a critical piece of us having a positive or a negative experience. Again, those social spaces, modeling what it looks like to participate in discussions. And then one thing I've had to do a lot in my courses is model how to politely disagree. So we do a lot of critical thinking and critiquing of each other's work. Those are important skills. The students don't always know how to do that well online. And it can be easy to misinterpret things that are communicated just through text. So we can communicate how to use each other's names, for example, is a really good strategy online. If I'm replying to you and I use your name, it's more personal. It takes some of the fear away of how I might misinterpret that. So we know those are main areas. Those are things that our online learners need, all of our learners need, but particularly our online learners. And those are things we can address through some design factors. So I'd like for you to think about those we just talked about. I kind of condensed them into 4 main areas. And I'd like for you to identify one that you feel is a real strength for you. So something that you think you do really well, whether you're teaching online or face-to-face. Do you think what you do really well is interaction and communication, using a variety of formats, feedback, is that your thing you do really well, or active learning? I'm going to ask you to identify the one that you think is a major strength for you, and we're going to do a 4 corners activity to talk about these for a moment. So we're going to use the room just like this box, just like the slide. So the front left corner up by the podium would be if you feel like a strength is interaction and communication. And then the front right would be feedback. Feedback is your thing, you're going to be here. And then back there in the back left, we would have presenting content in a variety of formats, and over here would be opportunities for active learning back by the food. So take a moment to identify a strength and move to one of the 4 corners, just following that as a guideline. The top row is the front, and the bottom row is the back. So when you get there, talk about what it is that you do in this area that you think works so well. This is a good way to share your strategies with your colleagues. Why is this a strength for you? What are you doing? What are your strategies and your tools? You guys are feedback. Would you like to just share? What do you do with feedback? Okay. Yeah, the sandwich feedback. Yes. What else? Any other strategies for feedback? Okay. I just read an interesting, one of my students just this past week did a literature review on feedback, and what she found was that those inline comments are not as helpful as the big picture comments, and I am really, especially with my freshmen who are learning to write, I get a lot of that inline feedback, and then I'm like, I was rethinking, like, do they even see that? I feel like it's helpful if I don't know if they do. But I think for the graduate students, they want more of that big picture, what are the big yeah. What do you guys feel like you're doing with interaction, communication? Why did you come to this corner? What is it that you're doing well? Yes. Yes. It's so interesting that you said that, because at lunch, when we asked students at our table what was the thing they wish people would do differently, instructors would do differently, they said reply to emails. Two different students said that they would get back to their corners. Sometimes they didn't respond in time. Yeah, and you don't message right away. Yeah, how can you not be on your phone right now? Yeah. Yeah, that's the whole network. What do I do for interactions? I probably do too much, because I just got feedback from a couple of my students. I asked them to give me, I do a contact log, so I give them a folder every time they walk into class, my face-to-face classes. And every day they rate like how well they learned that day, and they give me a little comment. So sometimes they'll just say, oh, this was fun, or I really didn't learn, whatever. Well, one time I just said, well, you just give me feedback on like, what did you think about what we did today? And 3 or 4 students were like, we did too much good work. Like, I need to do less. So I'm just trying to find a balance in that. That's what I think really where I am. So just this past week in that class, I gave them an activity and I gave them a choice. You can work with a partner or work by yourself. There's some who don't want to be in groups all the time. It's a really big class, so it's easier for me to manage if they're working through it. But some of them feel like it's too Yeah. Online, one thing I'm doing this semester is that I have like a literature circle group, sort of. So they self-selected a book, and they're in groups around the book they, so they're reading different books about online teaching. One group's reading about flipped learning, and one's reading about gamification, and one's reading about blended learning. And then they get in these groups online, and then they teach their peers in the other groups about what they learned from the book. So that's one thing I'm trying to do this semester. But it's hard because people don't pull their weight. You know, group work is tough. Okay, let's go back together, but don't sit down yet. I'm going to ask you to go to a new corner, and this time I want you to identify your area for improvement. So one of these you're doing really well, that's where you are right now. What could you improve? So which of these would you like to do better and go to a new corner? So we'll keep the same corners. This is communication and interaction. This is feedback. That is a variety of formats, and this is active learning. So reshuffle yourselves. Where do you need to work? You can do half the time in one and half the time in the other if you want.
I guess, interaction. That's hard.
They know you're off without, if they call you before you get there, you expect you to call them back when the class starts.
My students, I work Monday through Friday, 8 a.m. to 4:30. If it's something that for the previous day, I do give them I have a phone dedicated, and I just text them. If it's important, but you know, it does be important. And I mean, not the whole weekend thing. Oh, but I need to know. Because the world did not fall apart. So I think
I think in online world that's especially important because there's expectation that we're always on. I can reach you any time of the day, night or day, weekend.
Well, now when I taught the pharmacology class with 120 students, and by golly, I was there 24/7 because that's the only way you got the work done.
We're 8 minutes at bacon.
Well, that's the only way. That's the only way I would have gotten done. I got paid for one credit class.
And you need to have a life outside of that. The balance is really hard, isn't it?
No, and once I have to explain it to you, hey, listen, I'm here, but they complain that they're here at 10 o'clock at night. So I'm like, we're not going to split a long weekend. Or I have a class this weekend. Where do you think I'm seeing my kids? So I don't want to hear about not being able to take this kid to this or that and have to ask them.
Now, one thing I've learned to do though is when I get one question from a student, I'm like, there's bound to be another one, and so I just send an email out to all of them.
Same.
I do that.
Yeah, I have one.
But then, no. I posted an announcement on Blackboard. It immediately goes to our email. Then I get an email back from them. Did you not get my question?
That was me responding to your question, right? Yeah, I did the
No,
same.
I've learned to think. Someone alerted me that
the two, the da.
Yes,
And
no,
so did they get?
They want an individual remote.
They want me to put their name on there and like.
Thank you,
sticker.
Jada.
Or they just
pointing
don't
out
read the
other
general
ones.
announcements,
I
right?
like the school stuff, though. I'm gonna do that with our APIs, because just the snippets of video is complex and I don't.
It really eliminates a lot of that. Yeah.
I get bombarded right now, because we went over it with the sticker. And I told Mandy, I say, I'm not gonna read this to you in class because you're adults and you can read, but I really don't read long things. I mean, I've gotten to the point of if it's super wordy, I skim it. I don't have time.
Yeah, and you know they do the same thing.
And how can I expect them to do that?
Right?
If it's something I have to hand grade, if I have to like go through and read it over, or if I have for test grades, I have them up fast. And we go through the I's. If I have to hand grade something and read it, shoot. Like a month later, and I'm not even like, do this. I'm grading things while my kids sitting in my back. I'm that weird mom that's sitting there and like, with
Yeah.
They have a way of checking it. So I tell students all the time, I said, when I get a paper, there should be no grammar mistakes, no other things, because you've given it to someone else to read. And once I started doing that and really pushing that, I have not had to wrestle with papers that, is poorly written because they take it to someone else.
Yeah, so just communicate with them. That's a big difference. So you have to explain that to students. This is how to use this and this is how to use that.
You don't have a question discussion board?
I tried that last semester.
They don't use it. Mine don't use it. Yeah, mine
I
doesn't.
get a muddy at the point thing after class, because they kept emailing me all these questions. Or after point. Well, it was after class, before the test, and they always ask me 25 questions before the test. You're not going to hang, you're not going to find anything out. Learn anything. So here, I posted it, if you have questions, go ahead, throw them in there, don't put it on an email, put it on the discussion, because one person has a question, someone else will. So I'll answer it for everybody. Post it on here before Monday at like 9 a.m.
Okay, you can wrap up and come back together when you're ready. If you can head back to your seat when you're done.
There's no master degree, because they change so much. It's just different themes every time. You Bruce, you're getting old. You're getting old too.
Hopefully you're picking up a few new strategies you can put in your teacher toolbox. If you think about the like the snowball fight, the think, write, pair, share we did this morning, the 4 corners, like those are strategies that I use a lot in class. Those work in whatever your content is, and it's just a way to get that interaction going, get people processing and thinking and learning from each other. So those are strategies you can take and use in whatever situation you're in. So what I want to do is present to you some of the main frameworks for design, for instructional design. to help you think about the flow of a course, think about balance, think about design, and then share some tips and examples, and we'll end with some tools. And hopefully some of you are prepared to share some tools in our Smackdown. So one really common framework for instructional design is known as backwards design. It's universal design for learning. It was created by Wiggins and McTighe. And there's a lot of work out here around this backwards design model. This is what I use for designing courses, whether they're face-to-face or online or blended. So there are 3 phases to backwards design. The first phase is starting with the end. So what are your desired results or outcomes? So we start with the end in mind. That's really common. You've probably heard that before. So we identify our course outcomes. What are the things we want students to know and be able to do by the end of this course or this learning experience? Or if you're planning a whole program, what are those outcomes, the program outcomes? What do we want students to know and be able to do when they complete the program? So we start there with a clear picture of what we expect students to know and be able to do. And then we determine what would acceptable evidence look like. How would I know students know and can do those things? How would I measure that? How would I assess that? So we build our assessments. That's the second phase. And then the last phase is planning that learning experience, planning our week-to-week classes, building our course calendar, planning our texts and our activities and assignments. So what essentially you're doing is like teaching to the test, but in a good way, because what I'm doing is I'm developing assessments that are directly aligned with my results I want to see, and then I'm planning learning experiences that are going to prepare students to do well in those assessments. So it's like teaching to the test in a good way. So this backwards design process helps us make sure that what we're planning on a day-to-day basis or a week-to-week basis is going to help prepare students to be successful on those assessments so that they can demonstrate the desired results we're looking for. So I use this backwards design model in all my course planning, also just in the big programmatic planning at the program level, to identify what are our outcomes, how will we measure that along the way, and then what's the learning sequence that would guide students toward those outcomes. So this is just a snippet from a syllabus. I communicate this framework on my syllabi. And I'm in the School of Education, so we try really hard in the School of Ed to practice what we preach. If I'm teaching about backwards design in my classes, I need to be modeling what that looks like for students. So I show them, here are your outcomes, and here's how you're going to be measured on that, and here's how we're going to get there. So we're really clear about communicating that. So that's the backwards design model for instructional design, for planning your instructional sequence. Another common framework is known as universal design for learning. Universal design for learning essentially grew out of construction essentially, and the need to have buildings that are accessible for diverse types of people with disabilities, people with different levels of access. And that transformed into this, so in the online environment, we need to think about the same sorts of things. Accessibility. Is our content accessible to all types of learners? And the Universal Design for Learning framework has 3 main principles. One is that students need multiple opportunities for engagement. Students need multiple opportunities for representation. And students need multiple opportunities for action and expression. And there is a whole ton of research about universal design for learning. A lot of websites, if you just search for UDL, the CAST group is the one that you'll find a lot of resources from them. There are specific guidelines, lots of tips and resources. I won't go into all of that. But just to make you aware of one framework for thinking about instructional design. And this helps us get at why students learn, what they learn, and how they learn. So that in any course, students have multiple opportunities to engage, multiple opportunities to represent what they know, and multiple opportunities to act on and express what they're learning. So that's universal design for learning, and the goal of that is to make sure that learning is accessible for all students. And the third framework I want to share with you is the revised Bloom's taxonomy, which you're probably familiar with. It's been around for a long time. Well, Bloom's taxonomy has been around for a long time, and the revised taxonomy has also been around for several years. And it's based on these 2 dimensions. So the revised taxonomy added this new knowledge dimension. What you're probably most familiar with is the cognitive process dimension, which the revised version has changed some of the terminology. If it's been a while since you saw Bloom's taxonomy, it might look a little different. So we have this cognitive process dimension that goes from the lower level thinking, like remembering and understanding, up toward the higher level thinking of evaluating and creating. And then we have this knowledge dimension where students can learn factual information, conceptual information, procedural, and metacognitive. And the idea with the revised Bloom's taxonomy is that we want to move toward the highest levels as often as possible so that students are evaluating, analyzing, creating. And we also want to move toward the higher levels of the knowledge dimension so that students are working in conceptual ways, thinking metacognitively. And you can see here the taxonomy table where these interact. There's actually an interactive version of this online where you can go, and I can tell you where this came from. That slide's really small. It's from Iowa State University. Their Center for Excellence in Learning and Teaching, they developed this particular model of the revised Bloom's taxonomy. What you want to do in the instructional design process is give students opportunities to think in a variety of ways. It can be really helpful to create a taxonomy like this, just like in a Google Doc, a table, and plot out your outcomes. So which of them are factual, and which are conceptual, and which are procedural, and which are metacognitive, and which of them ask students to remember, understand, apply, analyze, evaluate, and create. You can plot your standards on a table like this, and it can be eye-opening because you may realize that your standards are all clumped here, or all over here, or all in this area. So we want to think about spreading those out so that we're getting students to think in all of these ways and all of these ways. But particularly along the cognitive process dimension, we want to move students up this ladder. Now these are foundational, so they have to remember and understand some things. But if we only stay here and we never get here, we're not giving students the opportunity to think in more complex ways. So this is another framework for thinking about instructional design at the course level. When you're planning out a course and you're first building those outcomes, make sure that your outcomes are representative of these variety of cognitive processes and types of knowledge. That's one thing I do with my pre-service teachers in some of our foundational education courses is they take some content standards from the North Carolina Standard Course of Study and they plot them on this taxonomy. And they usually realize that a lot of them are lower level. And what I tell them is that's the floor, not the ceiling. Like you have to do that, that's the minimum. So how can we take students higher up the cognitive process ladder here? How can we help students apply and evaluate and create and analyze? So those are three main frameworks that a lot of designers are using to structure and plan courses, whether they're online or face-to-face. Do either of those frameworks, are those ones that you're currently using? Are they some ones that you work through in your design process, or is there something different that you're using? What'd you say?
That's the
Going rate, okay. Would anyone like to share your design process? How maybe one of these works for you or doesn't? Okay. Can you say more about that?
Well, when we're actually working on the process, we start with the end in mind. So what are we wanting them to learn, and then work on, how we're going to evaluate that, and then how to do that. But then we plot our tests on Blooms.
Okay.
So our tests are plotted on Blooms. We look at our activities against Blooms. So we actually do a version of both of those.
Awesome. So the backwards design is more for the big picture designing of the learning experience. And then when you're looking at assessment items, you want to make sure that you're representative of these different levels of Blooms and that your assignments match that level. Okay? Anyone else want to share? Okay, I know you guys are almost ready for a break. We're going to take a break in about 15 minutes, and Dr. Ratliff will hopefully be back in a little bit for another surprise for you guys. So a few just basic tips. When you're designing online instruction, a few things to keep in mind. for your learners. And you probably experienced some of these yourself, maybe in a good or bad way. One of the key things is to provide a simple and consistent navigation. So you want to use some like symbols or icons that help students navigate the website. You want to be really consistent in that. So maybe every time you have a new module, the first module page looks the same. It's the same kind of structure. Content might be different, but students know how to navigate it so that it's consistent. Be careful with color and fonts. We might tend to want to get fancy and have a lot of color and fonts going on. That can be really difficult, especially for some of your learners who have disabilities. So be really clear. There are actually some websites you can look up to find what are the best color schemes to use for students with disabilities and what are the best fonts. There are a lot of recommendations out there around that. So if you work with students in that population, you might want to take a few minutes to do a little bit of exploring in that area to make sure that you're not hindering a student's learning experience just with the color that you're using for your background, for example. Choose your tools wisely. So when you are using technology, make sure it's closely aligned with the purpose. I'm a really big fan of technology. Obviously, I talk about it a lot, but the tools you use need to serve a purpose. Like it's not just about using the tool, but it's about the outcome we want to get through that. Sometimes we need a tool, and sometimes we don't to meet a purpose. I've talked about this a lot of times. If you have auditory content, make it visual. If you have visual content, make it auditory. So meeting students' needs with a lot of different formats. And one really helpful thing I've shared earlier is recording an orientation video to show students how to navigate the site. That's one of the most helpful things, according to my students, one of the most helpful things to help them be successful in a class is to get that orientation video at the very beginning of the semester. One thing I would encourage you to do is to balance synchronous with asynchronous learning. And over my time as an online instructor, something I've worked on. I think I'm getting a little better at this balance. For me, what that looks like typically is about 4 or 5 synchronous sessions over a semester, and the rest of the work is asynchronous. In the summers, I tend to avoid synchronous meetings because students are traveling and they're all over the place and they really want more flexibility. But last summer, I tried that, no synchronous meetings, and at midterm, I sent out a survey to ask students what was going well and what wasn't, and they wanted a synchronous meeting. So I planned one. I didn't require it, but some folks came. They really wanted that. If you have a fully synchronous online session, let's just consider that for a moment. Your course is fully synchronous. That means, every Thursday, for example, we meet online for 3 hours, and you don't do anything in Blackboard, but we meet online for 3 hours and we talk. So that is great, but some problems with that would be your online learners are there because they want that flexibility, they want the convenience, and you're essentially removing that from them and making them be there for that much time. So while synchronous is valuable, you could balance that with some asynchronous work where they have some flexibility and ability to work on their own time. But if we have a fully asynchronous environment with no synchronous, then we're really missing that interaction and some opportunities to build presence. So think about what that balance is, and for each of you it's going to be different, and depending on your learners and your discipline and your accessibility to technology, those sorts of things, you'll have to figure out what that balance is for yourself. For me, it's about 4 or 5 synchronous meetings a semester. And then sometimes I have one-on-one meetings with students in addition to that. If students request that, or if we've got a big project going on, I might schedule a one-on-one meeting with everyone. And that kind of depends on how big the class size is as well. Take some time to get to know your learners. I'm going to share some examples of these with you, some ways you can do that. Prepare to get feedback from your students about design. I do that every semester at midterm. I have a survey I send out, what's working well, what's not. And if I'm able, I will make some changes based on that feedback. And then build in opportunities for choices. We talked about that this morning. What if you have students who want it this way and some students who want it that way? So give them a choice when you're able. I mentioned just a few moments ago that as an online instructor and designer, I will have the entire course ready to go before the start of the semester. And that's one of the things that's really different between being a face-to-face teacher and an online teacher. So in my face-to-face courses, I don't do that. I have the syllabus, and I know where we're going. But on a weekly basis, I'm planning, a week ahead based on how things are going. And I have a lot of flexibility. But with an online course, for my learners, I need to have that thing ready to go on day one. Because some students are going to want to work ahead. They want to see what's coming. So I need to have that ready to go. But don't feel like you have to give students access to the full course on day one. There are some ways that you can work around this. You can have students work at their own pace to some extent, or you could give them the whole class and just say, go for it. Some of the folks we talked to at lunch said, this was great, it worked well for me, I was able to work at my own pace, and I finished the class 5 weeks early. Some students really want that. So you could consider allowing students to do that. You can also set up, I know Canvas does this, I'm assuming Blackboard does, you can set up prerequisites so that the course sort of unfolds as students complete certain things. So I know that in Canvas I can require this module before they even get access to that one, and then this one. And even within a module, I can have it set as prerequisite. So they have to score a certain level on this quiz, for example, before they get access to this content. And then they have to read this content before they get access to this assignment. So you can create it in that way to have some sort of control over when the content becomes available. One thing that can be very overwhelming for students is day one, the entire course is out there, and they're just like, oh my goodness, I can't do all this, right? It's a lot. So setting it up in a way where they get a bit at a time can be more manageable for some of your students. But just know you are going to have some learners who really want to know the whole picture, like they really want to plan it out. Your real type A students. So I'll show you just a few design examples that draw from some of those design tips and considerations. This is one of the things I've gotten a lot of feedback on lately is that my students want a real simple home page. Like the course landing site, they want it to be really simple and easy to get to the most important stuff. And most of my courses are designed with modules. In this particular course, I'm calling the modules quests. I'm gamifying it. It's a summer course. But what they want is they want to be able to get to that key content from the home page, and they don't want a lot of stuff. I used to have a tendency to want to put a lot of stuff on the home page. Like, here's everything you need to know, and they don't want that. It's too much, and it's hard to navigate. So think really simple on the home page. You can have more complex stuff in other places in the course, but on that landing site, real clean, real simple, and here's the most important stuff. Like they need to be able to get to those modules. That's what they're going to be using the most often. Yes, there are other tools along the side. They can go to discussions and quizzes and stuff like that, but what they really need access to the most often are those modules. So that clean, simple design, my students like a lot. Also, I talked about being consistent. So this gamification course that I'm teaching over the summer, I'm using this sort of like mission and top secret and that sort of thing, that kind of terminology within the course. So everything I'm designing in the course has that same kind of look and feel. So every content page, every announcement, every discussion board post, it's all going to kind of look like that so that it has a nice, consistent feel for the students. Also within that course, my modules are structured in a consistent way. So each module is broken up into these sections. So first there's what I'm calling a mission report. That's where they're going to read, here's everything you're going to do in this quest or this module. Then there's a need to know section. These are all the things you got to read. And then there's a status report. I'm calling it a status report. That's essentially just a discussion, an asynchronous discussion, where they're checking in with their team members. And then there's a deliverable. That's the assignment they've got to submit at the end of that. And I'm using that consistent labeling and consistent structure in every module. So students know what to expect from one to the next. Those sorts of things seem little, but they matter a lot. And students pay attention, and they always give good feedback on that. And if you don't do a good job of that, you get feedback as well. Like, this is really, it's really hard to find, or I missed this, I missed that, I didn't get that done on time because I just couldn't find it. You want to remove all those kinds of barriers. The course overview video, again, is so critical. Just taking some time to, this was, again, a Pictochart, a syllabus that I broke up into pieces, recorded a quick screencast about it. That orientation to the course is really important. Also, at the start of each module, I will have an overview page that gives students a picture of where we're headed. So sometimes it's a little paragraph, sometimes it might be a little video, or some sort of graphic, and then a list, like here's all the things you're going to do by the end of this module. So helping students have a purpose and kind of understand where you're going is something that you can build intentionally into your design. Also, when you are using other tools, like Flipgrid, for example, this is a Flipgrid example, I always embed those directly into Canvas. And you can do that in Blackboard. So you want to incorporate other tools, but you want to keep everything through the same platform as much as possible so the students aren't all over the place. Again, they'll say things like, I didn't know where to look. I didn't add to that discussion because I couldn't find it. So there are a lot of free tools that let you just embed right into your content pages in Blackboard. So do that as much as you can to prevent students from having to go other places. But then just in case the embedding, sometimes a computer will be, if they'll have an outdated version of Chrome, for example, and something won't show up. So I always put a link, just in case it doesn't work below, click here to go see it. So they have those options just to make sure that everybody can access it in some way. I mentioned getting to know your learners. There are a few different ways. Well, there are a lot of different ways to do that. A couple of ways that I do that, I have a choice board that I like to use at the start of the semester so students can choose how to help us get to know them. I could use this info form. That's really small font. I apologize. I just ask, what are your career goals? What are you hoping to learn in the class? What's something you're already kind of anxious or confused about? What's something you want me to know about you as a learner, and what can I do to make it a positive experience? I do that at the start of the semester, and it's amazing what they tell me that they would never tell me to my face. Like, they won't come up to me in class and tell me that they need extra processing time, or that their mom has cancer and they're really struggling at home. Like, there are things they will put here that I won't ever know about them unless I ask. And I just make sure I go back to those responses throughout the semester to keep that sort of fresh in my mind. And as you mentioned earlier, like learning inventories, questionnaires, those can also be really helpful to find out how students learn best. I mentioned a few minutes ago that I do a midterm survey every semester. I just want to check in and see how are students doing, how do they feel they're doing working toward these outcomes. And then I ask that specific sort of Likert scale information, rate yourself with this outcome, but then I also ask for feedback, descriptive feedback. What's working well? What's not? What suggestions do you have? And this is completely anonymous, so they can just be honest. And they will be honest. And the feedback I get is really helpful. Another tip I shared is providing opportunities for choice. And I was discussing just a few minutes ago with the group in the front left corner that one thing I'm doing this semester is giving students choice of which book they read. So this is a graduate course about online teaching, and the students in my course have just a huge range of experiences and career goals. It wouldn't make sense for me to ask them to read the same book. It just wouldn't. So I have all these choices. They vote. The ones that get the most votes become our book groups, and then they self-select. They sign up for a group. They read the book. They teach each other about it using online methods. So that's one way that I'm allowing students choice in their experience. I also use a lot of choice boards. This choice board in particular I just used last week in one of my face-to-face classes. A menu is another great strategy for just giving students some choice. There are always going to be some non-negotiables. Everybody has to do this thing. In every class, there are going to be those things. But if you really think about it, there are some ways you can give choice. And choice is a great thing to think about when you're working at the design level. How can I build in opportunities for choice? So we're going to revisit that snowball fight. Hopefully you still have a snowball paper close to you. Can you take a look at that and see if you have any new solutions based on what we've discussed and explored? Are there any new solutions to your challenges? You did. That was fun. I could. Yeah, I didn't put that in here because sometimes it freaks people out. It's like too much for some people, but if you think they would like to see that, I could. There are some who would like that. Okay, I can do that. I left it out. Sometimes I'll share it and then I get this like, oh my gosh, I can't even think of it. So the one I did share is one I'm gamifying in Canvas. That's why I shared some pictures that's a little bit simpler gamification, but I could go and read again last week. Okay. Okay. Thank you for suggesting that. I will. Are there any challenges out there that we don't have a solution for yet? And you kind of like to throw it out to the whole group? Who has a challenge on a snowball that we have not addressed and you're really wondering, like, how would you solve this? And we could talk about it.
This question was students being capable of using computers and technology needed to do online work. Because I'm going to tell you, they'll come in and say, I need all online classes. And I'll say, okay, and your first question is, do you have internet? Do you have a computer? Nope, don't have either one of them, but I got to have all online classes.
Right.
So I don't think we have talked about that. How do you know that their students are ready?
But if you ask them if they have access, they may have access. Go down the road at the library, but that doesn't mean that they can get
Online course. So one thing we've implemented recently at our university is an online skills assessment that students do. We're only using it right now in our fully online programs. So new graduate students who are moving into a fully online program have to first do this skills assessment. Do you know how to post to a discussion board? Do you know how to message your instructor? Can you do these sorts of things? And then students would get some support if they aren't able to do those things. We don't do that for just the undergrad who wants to take one course that's online here and one there. And they probably are the ones who need more support than our graduate students. I mean, a lot of that I think is managing expectations. And I don't know if you are in a position where you can say, I would recommend you not to take this course. It's going to have a really hard time.
Well, you do, but they're adamant this is what they're going to do.
Right. Because of childcare issues.
Right, they can't get there.
And jobs.
Yeah. And do you have like a tech help lab, or do you have any kind of resource?
There is IT help, and we do a fast assessment. We were talking about that, but we were wondering when the fast assessment is done.
Now it's done typically when they take their placement test. I don't know what we'll do now that we're doing this multiple
Well, that was our question.
We've
What
not
are
even talked about it.
And do we have access to those scores?
Yes.
Is that on what page?
And Vaughn was keeping
Yeah.
it.
It's in the student group. I don't remember the code that they used, but
I'm gonna tell Ann, she'll give you a shortcut to where she publishes it, because she did that to me from DEIT. And every time she upgrades it, she'll send you a link. So, she did me anyway.
Are there other challenges out there that are still, we don't have real solutions for, and we can talk about it?
Getting students not to wait till the last minute.
If you figured that one out, will you please tell me? Oh my goodness. This is why the last 2 weeks of the semester are a nightmare for me. Some grades. Who out there has a really good solution for that? There has to be somebody in the room who has a really good policy or a good solution for that. I don't. Oh, the question is, I'm sorry, what to do about students who, how to keep students from waiting to the last minute to submit work?
Like in the semester or?
Both, all of the above.
All of them.
Yeah.
And
I know somebody here has to do that really well.
You can send out reminder after reminder, you can give them extra points, the whole content's open all semester, work ahead, but it's being cut off on this day. That day comes and goes, oh, I missed it. I'm sorry, it's been open for 3 months.
Yeah. Yeah, I encourage students to withdraw at midterm if they're really far behind, and sometimes they don't. I just had a student email me yesterday. I know you encouraged me to withdraw at midterm, and I did it, and now I realize I should have, and hasn't done any work on like 3 months. I'm sorry, you're going to fail the class. I don't know what else to do. It's tough. And sometimes, like you were sharing earlier, they have to learn that, you know, sometimes that's the learning experience they need. And a lot of times if we keep hand-holding and keep on, they're never going to learn that. I really don't have a great solution for that. Are there other challenges that we can talk about?
this was a question, how do I conduct formal debates? And I've had synchronous meetings, but, you know, if you get microphone-wise in a debate, you know, several could be talking at the same time. You try to control that environment, but microphones are an issue when you've got several on the line.
Yeah. So the question is, how do you do a debate online? So one suggestion that you were sharing was to do it synchronously. So in a collaborate session, for example, Another idea would be to rethink the timing and do it asynchronously over a couple of weeks or something, where somebody develops their first argument, another person has time to read and respond, and then kind of slow down the debate a little bit, but get at the same ideas. But for that real time, synchronous would be, if they really need that practice thinking on their feet, that would need to happen synchronously. You could do it in a small group, so maybe don't invite the whole class. If audio is an issue and you don't need all 40 students there, maybe just invite the small group that's going to be engaged in the debate. You can record it, and everybody else can watch it later. So we're going to take a little break and then come back and look at some tools. I'm going to share with you some of my favorite design tools, give you a chance to share some tools. Hopefully some of you are going to do that. So take a break, and just a few. You know what to do with it? No. Rock out. What?
They're really cool. It's a Bluetooth speaker, and it will hook to your phone or to your computer, I guess. Sometimes it's anything with one music, and it has Wi-Fi or wireless. But you can, they're really easy to use at the lake or anywhere. So, and it's got a pretty good signal. So, cool.
Thank you.
It works really well. Mine connected to
So we're going to talk about tools now, and I like to talk about tools last, and I mentioned this earlier. It's really not about the tools. The tools help facilitate things that are important, things that we know are good practices. So that's why the tools come last. I had just a few tools I want to share with you, and then Kim asked me to share one. After I mentioned gamification, she said, hey, why don't you share that one? Kim took this gamified course with me, I think, right? Yes. Okay, so this platform is called 3D Game Lab, and it's the easiest way I've found to manage a gamified class. So gamification is when you take things that we know about games, like leveling up and experience points and badges and competition, and we put them in a situation that's not a game, like the course. And 3D Game Lab is a platform that lets you do that. It makes it really easy to manage. Every other time I've tried to do this sort of idea in a different environment, even like Canvas, it's really hard to manage. So 3D Game Lab does a lot of the management for you. And if you're looking for a platform that will really let students move at their own pace, 3D Game Lab is a great one. It's not free. It's like $100, somewhere around there, for a year subscription. My dean pays for my subscription because I use it in my courses a lot. So I can just show you a little bit about how it works. I don't want to go too far into the details, but I can give you a big picture. So 3D Game Lab lets you set up a course as a game, and you build your quests, and you determine what are the prerequisites. So they can have certain quests that have to be completed before other quests get unlocked. You determine what they earn after each quest, so they get a certain amount of experience points. They can earn badges and other kinds of rewards as they complete things through the course. And with the prerequisites, it's really nice. They have to complete those foundational quests before they can move on to things that are more complex. And then students are able to keep moving through when they're ready. They submit the work, they get approved, and they keep going. So students get rewards, different kinds of badges. When they submit work, there are different achievements that they can earn, and they love it. And my graduate students and undergraduate students love getting those badges. They will do anything for the badges. They also get to see how they're progressing toward other students. There's a leaderboard, and they're really competitive, so they want to make sure they're at the top of the leaderboard. So you can also have teams, which is a sort of a newer feature of 3D Game Lab. So you can have students working in teams, and you can assign quests to only specific teams. So only this team gets this quest, and that team gets this quest. So it's a good way to differentiate for students and add some collaborative component, because with 3D Game Lab, primarily they're moving on their own. They're moving at their own pace. But the teams helps you add a little bit of a collaborative aspect. So that's 3D Game Lab. It looks difficult. It's really not that difficult to set up. There's a quest builder here. You click on quest builder, and you give the quest a name. You give it a certain date to become available. And you can make it expire, which is one way to solve that issue of students not turning in work. Once the quest expires, they can't access it anymore, and that it's gone. So they miss the chance to earn those points. So essentially, by the end of the semester, they have to earn a certain amount of points. And if they let all these quests expire, they're not going to get the points they need. And then you include the details. This is where you would build all your content. So I'll show you an example of a quest. You'd put your videos or your things to read, your instructions, and then you tell them, okay, so to earn the points, here's what you have to do. You type here what they have to submit or do. You tell 3D Game Lab how many points they would get based on completing it. You can set up categories, so the quests are in different groups. You can set prerequisites if you want. You can add an icon. I'll show you an example of what a quest would look like, might look like. Let's see. So when they click on a quest, they get to the little blurb. They get to see if there are any prerequisites involved, and then when they click View Details, they'll see all the content. So it's just basically like a content page in Canvas or Blackboard. I would put my videos there, all my content, and then you tell students what they have to submit. They submit it, and then for me, I just have to monitor this Quest Approver tab. So as students submit quests, they would show up here. You can have some of them get approved automatically, like if it's just a content page, once they read it and submit it, they get approval. But if it's a bigger assignment, they need to submit it, I have to approve it, and then they can move on. So that's 3D Game Lab. If you were looking, Kim said there might be some of you looking for something like that and exploring this idea of gamification. So if you are, 3D Game Lab is a great platform for that. Sometimes I have students who, when they first see that, they freak out, like, oh my gosh, I hate this, and then at the end of the semester, they love it. They had so much fun. Okay, so I'll share with you a few tools for designing content, and I can demo these for you, and then I'm going to let you guys come up here and do that. So I'm going to share with you some really simple tools, some easy-to-use tools for designing content. One of them is Canva. Canva, not Canvas, Canva.com is a free graphic design tool. It's not interactive, so you're not designing things that students can interact with. They're not clickable, but it's just a graphic. So, for example, the one on the right is just a graphic I designed to help promote the program that I coordinate to help recruit for the program. The one on the left, just this past week, yesterday actually, in class, I gave awards. And so I used Canva to design the awards. There was an awards template. So there are all these templates. It's completely free. Well, there are some paid ones, but I only use the free ones. So there are a lot of free templates. There are newsletter templates and certificate templates and business card templates and poster templates and all kinds of templates. So you just click on the template you want and you add your text. It took me very little time to do both of those, because I just found a template I liked and added my stuff. So that's Canva, and I can take you there and show you how simple it is to get started. Just be careful when you are selecting a template to make sure it says free. On the template, it'll say free or pro. So let's say I want a poster template. I would just click on poster. And then here are all these templates. So you can see they'll say right here free if it's a free template. And if it doesn't say free, I don't want to mess with it. So you find one you like and you click on it, and here it is. And then all these things here are editable. So I can change the title. I can change whatever this is supposed to be. I can change these graphics. I can move things around. I can delete them. So if I don't like that clock, I can just delete it. And then if I'm looking for something different, maybe I want a picture of a laptop, I can find whatever I need, find a free one, and drag it over. So it's really easy. And this search feature, you can find whatever you're looking for. Again, you can make a graphic that looks really professional. It looks like you spent a lot of time, but you didn't actually spend a lot of time. So that's Canva. And the next one is one I've talked about a lot so far today, which is PictoChart. It's one of the tools that I get the most use out of. It is free, but I actually do pay. Actually, my dean pays for my paid account, because with the paid account, you get a lot more templates, and I use it so much, I got tired of using the same templates over and over again. So let me show you how easy it is to get started with PictoChart. It's very similar to Canva, but Canva is more for small graphics with not a lot of content. Like I just need a really quick flyer or a poster or something small and simple. PictoChart is what I use if I need something more complex, like an infographic, a digital syllabus. I need a lot of content on there. So these are just some of the ones I've created in PictoChart. So you click on Create New. What do you want to create? You can create something that's printable, so it'll keep it in a page size so that it's easy to print out and looks nice. The infographics are not necessarily always printable because they sometimes get really long depending on how many sections you add. But let's say I want to do an infographic. It's going to take me to the place where I choose my templates. And I can look at only free templates, or I can look at pro templates. If you look at free templates, you can scroll and see there are a few available. Or you can just start with a blank infographic. If you really like design, you can start with a blank page and add all the features you want. But if you're looking for something that's already created and you just want to add your own content, you would just scroll through here, find one you like, click Use Template, and again, it works a lot like Canva. So all of these things are editable. All the pictures, all the text, I can change it to say whatever I want it to say. I can delete these if I don't want that and I want to put something else. And over here are all my icons. So again, if I'm looking for a laptop, I can do that. I could put text on it if I wanted to. So everything here, you have all these options. So I just added some text. I can put it right there. And I have these text editing options, changing the color, the font, all that stuff. So just like I mentioned earlier, you end up with something that looks really nice and professional, but it doesn't take a lot of time. And the default is that it'll have all of these suggestions, but you can remove all these sections, but you can remove, if you don't need this block, for example, you can just delete the whole thing. And you can add new sections with the plus if you need to add some more. So that's PictoChart. And when you create it, you get the option to download it as a picture file, or to share it as a link, or to embed it in like your Blackboard. You can embed it directly there. Okay, so that's PictoChart. I know I'm going quickly. I want to give you guys time to share. Questions about either of those two, Canva or PictoChart? Another one that's really simple is just slides. I use slides a lot to design content. If you use PowerPoint or Google Slides, it's really easy to just design a nice little graphic with a tool like that. This course I'm gamifying, I've built all the graphics for that course in Google Slides. So I just picked a template, picked a background I like, and I've just tried to keep a consistent feel. That's a really easy, very easy way to build content. So I'll demo just a few tools for interaction and assessment. Padlet is one that I use a lot. Some of you guys are probably familiar with Padlet. I think I probably shared it the last time I was here. So Padlet is like an online corkboard, an online bulletin board where students can post sticky notes. So they post little notes. The sticky notes can have text, they can have images, they can have videos, it can be a link that takes them somewhere else. And a recent feature that Padlet just added is that now students can comment on each other's sticky notes. So that's brand new. So a student posts a sticky note and then other students can reply to that. So that's Padlet. It's really easy to set up a board. And again, I embed it directly into Canvas. You can embed it directly into Blackboard to prevent them from having to go somewhere else. Google Forms I use a ton. I've shared with you some examples of those already. I use them for assessments. I use them for Google Forms for surveys. And they're really easy to embed in your Blackboard or your Canvas site. And Google Forms has a lot of different question types. There actually is a way in Google Forms to make sort of like a choose your own adventure assessment where it would adjust based on how students respond. So the option is called go to page based on answer. That's what Google calls it. But essentially what you do is a student answers B and that's wrong, so it sends them to a video or whatever you've built there, like, okay, review this and now go on. Or they answer C, which is right, and they go to the next question. So you can direct them to different places in the quiz based on how they respond. And that's one of the only tools that does that, and it's free. Diigo is another tool I use a lot, especially with my graduate students. Diigo started as a way for people to just save their bookmarks to the cloud, essentially. So you have all your favorite websites. You might save them to your computer. The problem with saving your favorites to one computer is that they're on that one computer, and you're somewhere else, and you want to pull up this favorite site, and you can't find it. So if you save it to Diigo instead, it's in the cloud, and you can get to it from any device, your phone, any computer, anywhere that's web-enabled. You just go to Diigo.com, and you can access all your favorites. So that's great for you, but for your students, you can actually set up Diigo groups. with your students' email addresses, or if you don't have email addresses, you can set up their own usernames and passwords. You can do that. But you put them in a group, and then within the group they can share websites, they can share articles and web resources they find. And they can even share annotations on those websites with each other. It's really cool. So for example, there's an article about the Let's Move initiative. A student could highlight and add sticky notes and then share that website with other people in her DIGO group. And the other people in that group would not just have access to the website, but would they be able to see her sticky notes and annotations right on the website. So it's a really cool tool. It's completely free. You would sign up for an educator account with DIGO, and that would give you access to the ability to set up groups. And once you set up groups, all your students in there are able to share resources. You could have one big group for the whole class. You can also have smaller groups, so students can belong to multiple groups. So if they're doing a research project or something and they need to be able to share resources, DIGO is a really great tool for that. And I think this is a tool I shared last time I was here. These two tools, EduCanon and Edpuzzle, do essentially the same thing. They let you upload a YouTube video and embed questions at certain points in the video. So if you have a video like you're demonstrating a process, or you have a content video and you need to check and see if students are understanding or paying attention, you can add questions throughout the video. And it will pause and not let them continue until they respond or do whatever you've asked them to do. So you can make, what used to be a passive experience, just sort of watching a video, you can make it an active learning experience. That's EduCanon and Edpuzzle. One of the downsides is that they only work with YouTube. I think one of them works with a couple of other platforms. But if you have a video that's not a YouTube video, you're going to have to get it onto YouTube in order to use those tools. And this is what I mentioned this morning, GroupMe. That's one my students taught me about. It's just a group messaging app that they love. I've used it every semester, I guess the past 3 semesters. My students love it. So that's how I push out most of my announcements and reminders, because they connect it to their text messaging. So they can choose to connect it with their text or not. They can just go through the app, but most of them do connect it through their text. And they're on their phones all the time, so they never miss a reminder or an announcement from me. I'm taking a group of students tomorrow on a service learning opportunity, and I got messages today through the GroupMe, where are we meeting and what time, and I'm probably not going to see that as quickly if it goes through email, but if it comes through GroupMe, I see it right away. I don't link it to my text because I don't want them blowing up my text, but I go into the app and check it. It gives me the little notification. So that's GroupMe. You can also use it on the web, just at groupme.com. So you can have as many groups as you want. I have groups for all my different classes. You can also do individual direct messaging through there. Like sometimes in my classes, I'll send students across campus to do something or go create something, and they'll share it in the GroupMe. It's an easy way for them to share their work with each other, because they'll submit it to Canvas and I can see it, but everybody else can't see it. But if they put it in GroupMe, everybody gets to see their work. Right, yeah. Cell numbers are completely private. They just see usernames. That's a good point. Thank you. So they can link it to their phone but to get text, but we wouldn't see that information. One really recent free video conferencing platform is Zoom Meeting. So if you're looking for a web-friendly and mobile-friendly way to have synchronous sessions, maybe you don't like Collaborate and you want something a little more intuitive or user-friendly, Zoom Meeting is free. It's video conferencing. So the free version lets you have a certain number of people in your meetings. I think it's 50. And it will only let you have a meeting that's 40 minutes long or less. And if that's enough for you, then you can do the free. If you want more meetings and more people and longer meetings, you would have to pay, obviously. But even the paid is like $19 or something. It's really cheap. So that's Zoom Meeting. It's a really easy way to do virtual office hours or to have class meetings. Okay, so I'm hoping that some of you are prepared to share your own tools. So I'm going to just get on the web. And who has a tool to come up here and demo for us? Something that you use and want to share. There has to be somebody who's been thinking today. I really would like to share. I can go there. Do you want to come up here and talk about it so everybody can hear you?
No, I'll just stay right here. Pull in clickers up, but clickers worked really well for my students. They really liked it, and I use it for exam review. It's these odd squares, and you print those squares off, and each side has a different letter or number, and depending on how they hold that up, you scan the crowd with your phone, and it'll pick up their answers, and it will show them on the screen. I had problems with it because I kept dropping the internet, so, but it worked real well. The students really liked it. Time consuming getting it set up.
Right, you have to set up your classes in advance. If somebody was asking earlier, what do you do if all your students don't have devices? And Plickers is a great solution for that because the teacher is the only one who has to have a device. Did you print the cards or did you buy the cards?
I printed them.
Okay, and it works fine?
Works fine.
So you can print a free set of cards from their website, or you can order a set. Amazon has them cheaper, I think, than the Plickers site does. But you'll get a nice thick, like, cardstock laminated. Oh, nice. Okay. So Plickers is a great tool for assessment. It's essentially a multiple choice tool, and then you get all that data in real time to see how students are progressing, and then you can adjust as you need to. Thank you. What else would you like to share?
Oh, I use something like, it's kind of like that, but I think it might be, for me it would be easier, because you don't have to, I use that just poll everywhere.
Oh, yeah.
Because they can actually just either go on their phones and text the answer in, or they can just go on the computer and it gives them a graph that I can show on the screen, and it live shows, like, 75% are saying A. And
I use poll everywhere too. I like it because, like, I like some of the other options, but I can't do it from two sites. And I use poll everywhere, and you can embed that in your PowerPoint.
Yep.
So it goes like you're doing your PowerPoint or doing a presentation, you go to your next slide, and it pops up and it'll feed straight into it. It's actually like computer to do so. And it works well for us. And actually, you can just kind of get thought clouds. So with difficult subjects that people don't want to tell, like their personal experience or put their name with it, they can put it up there and nobody knows exactly who it was. So they can kind of give more of a...
Yeah,
That's my favorite one, the word cloud one.
Yeah, I'll use it a lot for, like, if we're doing surveys too, and somebody wants to, they don't want to say something, maybe they don't want to talk about it in class and mention something that's a problem, they can just do it there. The only problem I've ever had, and I had a lot with the burden students, the cohort, the high school students, they would sometimes, because you can vote both on your phone and on the computer, they would be playing with me. I'd be up there talking, and they'd be moving the thing so that the graphic would be going up and down, up and down. And I'm like, you need to stop voting.
Stop voting. You can end it, like you can make it not be live anymore.
Yeah, I have to because they play with it the whole time.
I had somebody write chats like 400 times.
Yeah, see, that's the only down. But you can have fun with it.
Thank you for sharing. What else? What other tools are you using? Or are there any tools I've talked about really quickly that you'd like to see a demo of? Oh, ThingLink. Yes, I can show that. That's probably the most complicated tool I've shared today. ThingLink is the one, if you remember, I shared earlier the infographic where you could click on it and go to videos of me explaining the syllabus. My daughter has been playing around. She loves pandas. Okay. So here's like the backwards design template, for example. I teach a class where students learn about the backwards design planning, and this is a template they have to use to build a plan during the semester. So I created this, I just uploaded the template into ThingLink, and then I added these little touch points at different places on the image, and then those are some short videos of me explaining each piece. So to create it, you add pictures.
Welcome to the ThingLink product.
Okay. You upload your picture. You just choose whatever your picture is that you want to upload. Let's see if there's any pictures on this computer. Oh wait, there were some good ones. Okay, so you upload a picture, and then you just click where you want to tag. So maybe right here on day 1. And I would, right here in the top left, I would put whatever I want that to link to. Maybe I have a certain YouTube video that explains that, and I would put it there. So when students would click on that, it would take them to that video. So I guess it's not as complicated as, not that complicated. So you just click wherever you want the things to go. And you can also change what you want these little things to look like, the icon image. So usually the default is just as a colored circle, but like on that one example, I did an A, B, C, D, E because I wanted them to go through it in order. And there are other things you can get if you pay. I do the free version, so you're a little bit limited, but everything I've needed to do, I can do in that way. So you can just link it. You don't have to link that to videos. You can link it to whatever, any kind of URL, any kind of website. And then students just hover over it. So if they take their mouse off, it just looks like a picture, but when you hover, you get access to those touch points. And then you can just embed that directly onto your Canvas page or your Blackboard page. Okay, Dr. Ratliff, I think we're probably winding down, so I'm going to just put my contact information up here and turn it back over to you. I have business cards if anybody wants my email address to take with you. If you have questions or you want to follow up on anything, I'd be happy to stay in touch.
Are you going to send your slide
Yes.
presentations to us?
Yes, Dr. Ratliff asked, so I'm going to send them to her and let her pass those on. Yep, you're welcome.
Anybody have any other questions? Well, Dr. Linton, thank you so much. I hope you all